To Bet the Edge, I'm Jay Croucher here with Drew Dinsick. Today we're going to talk about Adrian Griffin and the backup because I was just on Golf Channel, so I apologize for that. But Drew, let's quick teaser on Adrian Griffin. We'll get more into this at the end of the show, but what are your emotions post Griffin out?
I don't know. I kind of want to hear your take on Torrey Pines.
No, I like Jason Day.
No, this was absolute out of the clouds. Did not see this coming. Scratched my head for 5 minutes as to why now. Is there more to this? Is this, but we can kind of go back a giant step to preseason. The hire didn't make sense in the first place because the move to get Damian Lillard is a win now, like literally now. You must win now. And if that doesn't come through to fruition because your coach is going through the growing pains of learning how to navigate a playoff series, you're in deep trouble. So I guess maybe they came to that realization with whatever data they've got in-house telling them, the way they're performing relative to what they're expecting to perform. It's just not up to snuff. But this was a shocker. And the names that they're floating around to replace them have me kind of even more perplexed.
Yeah, indeed. Someone who's holding a lot of Celtics title equity, I would have preferred that Adrian Griffin just stick around the whole year. But if we're going to get Doc Rivers instead, and we're recording Tuesday late afternoon, then I don't think it's too big of a change. And the thing is, I'll get more into this a bit later, but people are like, how do you fire a coach when he's 30-13 as a rookie head coach? It's like, well, they're not really, they are 30-13, but they're 10th in the NBA in net rating at just a meager plus 3.8. They really should be more like a 26-17 type of team. And I think that they probably did the right thing moving on. Anyway, we'll get more into that a bit later. Now, let's welcome in Caitlin Thompson of Racquet Magazine. Great to see you again, Caitlin. It has been a while. Let's get straight into it. We'll tackle both the men's and women's side, but let's start off with the blockbuster. Coco Gauff is a plus 165 underdog against Aryna Sabalenka, who has just been going scorched earth all over my mother country, Australia. She is minus 210 to continue that run. What's your read on this one?
I have so much love for Coco Gauff. I was among the incredibly energized fanship that was cheering her on in this most recent 3-set battle between the two of them. Tomorrow's match, the match that is airing as soon after we get done talking, it is not going to be close. And Aryna Sabalenka is going to go through Coco Gauff frankly, like a blowtorch through butter. I think she looks so unbeatable. It's like she's unhinged her jaw and just started swallowing other Grand Slam winners whole, as she did with Barbara Krejcikova in the past round. And frankly, Aryna Sabalenka has too much firepower for Coco Gauff, especially the way Coco is playing a little defensive. She always moves well. She always battles well, but she's not quite at her best in this tournament. We've seen her struggle through a couple matches. The match she had the other day with Marta Kostyuk was real ugly. She won it, and winning ugly counts just as much as winning pretty, but does not bode well for her to meet a very, very in-form Aryna Sabalenka. So I don't see this being close. I don't give Coco much of a chance. Love her. Would love to see her get back to the finals of another slam, but unlikely given the form that Aryna Sabalenka finds herself in and how much Coco has struggled, I think, in the past couple of matches.
Okay, this sounds familiar. I think I said a lot of this stuff myself before the U.S. Open final, where Coco Gauff took care of business. Granted, it wasn't a clean win. She went down 2-6 in the first set, and I was like, "Yep, just like I thought. No particular test here." But Coco did dig in and win 6-3, 6-2 to take home her first slam, and she's carried that form through to a degree here in Australia, which is encouraging because her first half of last year was really, really rough, and this is a different player entirely, which is exciting. But she's got a 4-2 head record over their career now. Really, last year's U.S. Open and last year's Indian Wells are probably the only two you can hold up and say, yeah, this is indicative of the players and who they are now. But the question that I will always have backing Aryna Sabalenka in the semifinal is that it's a slam semifinal. And this is where she has so much mental baggage when it comes to this level of a slam. And the fact that it's against, the players she lost to most recently at the slam level? Like, is that enough of an X factor to close the gap? Because I agree with you. The form you've seen from these two players at this tournament would clearly indicate Sabalenka should be your favorite. But I guess, is there any angle into the dog price here just on the basis of, head-to-head pedigree and some mental baggage?
Nerves are certainly a valid factor. And I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the things that we also said before that US Open final was just how unlikely it was that Coco was even going to compete, even up until really half of the way through the second set, where she just looked outmatched, outgunned. And Aryna Sabalenka had, up until I think last year, gotten a real block on her game, on her psyche to get past semifinals. So I'm glad you brought that up. The other thing that we have not given her both credit and a bit of a demerit for is she's also struggled with her serve. She famously had the yips. There's a lot going on in the mind of Aryna Sabalenka, or maybe not a lot going on, but either way, it's not always helpful. What I will say is the big difference here is that, to me, watching that US Open final, the 3-set battle, the longer Coco hung in and the more the crowd got into it, the more the belief raised for Coco and just absolutely dissipated for Aryna. I don't think that crowd factor, as much as both Aryna Sabalenka and Coco Gauff are beloved by the Australian crowds, it's just so hard to imagine that they get in Aryna Sabalenka's head the way that the New York crowd willing Coco on to victory plays as much of a role. That said, look, only Aryna Sabalenka knows what goes on in the mind of Aryna Sabalenka. So I do think that's an X factor for sure.
Okay, you're making your compelling points here. Because I wanted the dog price, because I just think there's this is it's a little tilted based on what we see. A little too reactionary. Congratulations, you handled Barbara Krejcikova, who you've handled 5 times in your career. Big, congratulations. Now you got to go to the semifinal and you got to beat Coco. Like, how about this? Can I sell you on like 5-1 for Coco Gauff to win 2-1? Because I agree with you. Like, it's not going to be easy for her to get this one across the finish line. She's going to have to use her endurance. She's going to have to make this a longer match, I would guess. Is that a better way in?
It's certainly a valid question. If she's taking this, it's only going to be in 3. There's no straight set march to victory in the books for Coco Gauff. But listen, we would be so thrilled if she were to pull it off and get herself to the second Grand Slam final in a row. The last one, she won.
Yeah. For me, the concern about Sabalenka, it's not so much the final that she lost against Coco. It's the fact that, think back to how dominant she was in the first 5 matches of that US Open, where, again, no one got more than 4 games off her in a set. Yeah. And then she got bageled by Madison Keys in the first set of the semi, and she just completely let go of the rope. And she really should have lost that match to Keys. And just the fact that is still lingering in there, the fact that in the semi against Mukova, like, that was done. And then she just let go of the rope. I think the Wimbledon semi against Ons, I just think Ons played out of her mind. I don't think Sabalenka bottled that, so to speak. But I think there has been some bottling at different stages. But speaking of that US Open run, the woman who got 4 games off her in the lead up to the semi was Xinwen Zhang, who is on the top half of this draw. Caitlin, what do you make of her chances to get to the final? And do you think anyone in the top half of the bracket can knock off Gauff or Sabalenka?
Good. So many good questions. Qinwen has been one of my favorite players to watch for the last couple of years, so much so that we put her on a cover of Racquet Magazine last year just because of how explosive her game is, how well she moves. She has an incredibly cool combination of sort of Chinese first strike mentality. Not to generalize, but a lot of players who grew up in the sort of shadow of Li Na took away from her, a really attacking mentality. But also she trains in Spain, which means she defends really well. She can really outlast, outwit, outplay from the baseline. So I'm a huge, huge stockholder in the Qinwen Zhang equity basket. And I, to me, don't see anybody in her top of the draw. Yes, we've seen some incredible tennis out of Anna Kalinskaya, who she plays next. Yes, we've seen Noskova, the young Noskova, who knocked out Iga Swiatek. And Diana Yastremska, who qualified to get in here. She's always a dangerous lurker. She can hit the bejesus out of the ball and, get back into matches that she has no business winning just by pure virtue of, sheer power. That said, 0% chance any of those other folks give Zhang a run for her money if she plays the way that she has been playing in these last couple of matches. She has been rounding into form. I think she is just so much more of a possessor of tools than anybody else in that part of the draw. As good as Linda Noskova is, as good as Yastremska is, as good as Kalinskaya is, they're all kind of more one-dimensional than Qinwen. Qinwen Zheng, to me, really deserves to be in the final because of the kind of season she had last year and because of what she's been able to do in this tournament so far, just really, really gaining steam. So I expect her to be a great matchup for whoever makes it through to the final on the other side of the draw.
Well said, and I couldn't agree with you more. She's an outstanding player, and the fact that she's breaking through at this event on this surface is a surprise. And I think portends, pretty amazing things for her throughout 2024. So let's go, Zhang. I would like to pivot here to the men's side where we have a pretty epic matchup. A lot of people have been looking to 2024 as a breakout opportunity for Jannik Sinner, but he has the stumbling block now of facing an informed Novak Djokovic in the semifinals in order to make his first career slam final. I don't think this is that bad of a matchup for him personally. I backed some Sinner in pre-tournament, largely understanding that he was going to have to clear this hurdle. But in his career, we've seen him challenge Djokovic at Wimbledon. Granted, he backed that up with a non-compete the second time he played Djokovic, and he beat him in the Tour finals. He beat him in the Davis Cup finals. Like he definitely has slain the dragon, so to speak, and I think will be at least a little bit more mentally fortified as he takes on Djokovic in this particular matchup. What can you take away from some of the past history, recent and lots of history between Sinner and Djokovic, and trying to project how they'll play in this conditions, and considering, I don't know, I guess Jannik is a little less tested, a little less stressed to this point in the tournament than Djokovic has been, surprisingly. Yeah,
surprisingly, I think it sort of struck me watching Novak play a couple of these matches that he might be a little under the weather. He hasn't looked 100%, which, Novak Djokovic can win under any circumstance, in any condition, healthy, sick, with one arm tied behind his back. The guy just really loves a challenge and sees it as something to overcome as opposed to, an excuse for not performing to his best. That said, Jannik Sinner had a fantastic end of the year last year playing Djokovic in those burst of matches just back to back to back, and gained, I think, a ton of confidence with the ability that he could hang in and hit through him. To beat Novak Djokovic, you have to hit through him. You have to hit him off the court. Jannik Sinner gets low, he stays low, and he hits really, really, really clean early balls, which I think is what he absolutely has to do against Djokovic. He has to take it to him. All of those matches at the end of last year, best of 3 sets. Everybody knows that Novak Djokovic is a little bit vulnerable, if he's vulnerable at all, in best of 3. Best of 5 is a total different ballgame. So we haven't seen Sinner really step into that echelon of best of 5 set player against Novak Djokovic. And this match is probably, to me, on the men's side, the most exciting popcorn match I can imagine, because I think Sinner has a better chance of taking out Djokovic than anybody else in the draw, even including Carlos Alcaraz, who took him out in best of 5 at Wimbledon last year. So for me, it is coming down to this. I will not be missing it. I don't care what time my alarm needs to go off, because the Jannik Sinner, Novak Djokovic best of 5 that we are owed as tennis fans is at the door. And I'm with the Kuroda boys, man. I'm going to scream my head off because I actually am going to give Sinner the edge.
Okay, I like it. I'm not sure any man has cost me more money over the journey than Sinner, outside of maybe Carson Wentz and Jimmy Butler, but he's certainly in the top 3. And I still am mentally scarred from there's a quarterfinal, right, against Alcaraz at the US Open, where he had match point on his racket. I can still see him serving to the advantage side and losing that point. But he has some demons to exercise, but it seems like he's in as good a position as he could possibly be to do that. Now, as we're recording, don't know what the matchups or what will happen in the bottom half of the draw. Is there someone in the bottom half? Alcaraz is the obvious one, but do you think that anyone else can give Sinner or Djokovic a run for their money in the final?
And the man who is up for the task is certainly Daniil Medvedev, both because he's done it before and he is the perennial wild card. If anybody enjoys a wild and hairy ride to a Grand Slam final, it's Daniil Medvedev, because he's done it so many times that I think that's actually his preferred way to be. He's kind of been under the radar this tournament, even though he's played great. He's come through some very, very tight matches, including a 5-set epic that finished at something like 4 a.m. I actually think he has just as good a chance, if not better, than Alcaraz to win the tournament. So I think, to beat Djokovic. So for me, actually watch Medi. He is somebody who I think will come through her catch, and I also think he is a real threat. Really on this surface, especially if the person who comes out of that top half is Novak. Novak versus Medi for a final, I think, would be another incredible popcorn match on the men's side.
Yeah, I have no idea who's going to win this tournament. These are all really even and really good matchups. Medvedev Alcaraz, if we get it in the other semifinal, that was one of the most memorable men's tennis matches last year, where Medvedev took Alcaraz out in the semifinals at the U.S. Open. Awesomely cool. And then if we get another Alcaraz Djokovic final, would be a must watch. Like literally any combination of the most likely four at this point is just going to be must see tennis, and that's very exciting. And honestly, I think there is definitely a chance of whichever of the two semifinals is more competitive, whichever competitor who emerges is more damaged heading into the final is probably at the true disadvantage in terms of that being the, kind of the way into betting the final here. So I have this circled, whereas even if Sinner can't get it across the line against Djokovic, but he pushes him to 5 and he really takes a serious bite out of him, that's exactly how Medvedev got Djokovic at the U.S. Open. Like that was it. Zverev did it to him, and that opened the door. So I definitely now if Djokovic comes through 3-0 and Sinner out and Alcaraz Medvedev is like a best of 5-hour match, then I'm going to be pretty bummed because Djokovic is going to be minus 300 in the final. But we have so far to go to get across. I mean, basically the men's Australian Open, it's about to start.
Yeah, exactly. It's about to start, and it's probably the most exciting business end of a Grand Slam I can think of in recent years on both sides.
Personally, I hope we get the Sinner Alcaraz rematch, just because that was such an epic performance, and from both sides, really. I still have no idea how Sinner got in position to have a match point, let alone won a set in that match. It just felt like he was being outplayed the entire time. And then he just went, again, like Sabalenka scorched earth and won a tiebreak 7-0, and that's all happening. That was an epic, and I hope, selfishly, that we get a rematch. But Caitlin, thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell people where to find you on social media or anything that you're working on at the moment?
Absolutely. Racquetmag.com. We are actually doing an Australian Open daily podcast. Our talent, Renee Stubbs, is down on the ground with our cultural attaché, Andrea Pekovic. They're doing daily recaps. There's a lot of very fun personal details that goes into those pods because they're also roommates when they're not commentating or playing in the Legends tournament. So, you'll hear about trips to the post office. You'll hear some, breakfast shit talk. It's an absolute wonder, and we're thrilled to have them. So it's our daily podcast. You can subscribe at the Renee Stubbs Tennis Podcast or check us out at racquetmag.com.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much, Caitlin. Enjoy the rest of the matches. Cheers. Okay, before we get back to Adrian Griffin, Ohio State Drew is looking to keep pace with the front runners in the Big Ten women's basketball standings. They'll have a chance to do so on Thursday when they face Illinois. Watch the Buckeyes and Fighting Illini showdown at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Peacock. All right. Really feels like Jannik Sinner is going to bottle this at some point. We will see. Adrian Griffin won't be bottling anything because he is out, as we mentioned. So let's talk about the betting repercussions. The Bucks actually drifted to win the East after this. The Sixers firmed a little bit. I don't think this really does anything in terms of the Bucks' outlook. I would say that it probably raises their ceiling a little bit just because it's different. And they, again, as you mentioned, they were 10th in net rating despite being basically fully healthy the entire season. I think Giannis might have missed 2 games and Lillard has almost played every game. So do you think this does anything? And it really looks like now it's going to be Doc Rivers. Do you think this does anything for the Bucks' title chances?
Is that really likely? Like more than 80%, you think?
I mean, the way that Shams is tweeting about it, it seems like it's going to happen. They're working on a contract.
Okay, well, Game 7, Eastern Conference Finals. Give me Celtics -5 for my lungs. The idea that we're going to get another Doc Rivers Game 7 in my lifetime is pretty exciting because for whatever it's worth, the tactical wrinkles just elude him at that stage of the competition. And, he didn't have the answers for the Celtics when he was with the Sixers, and now he's going to have it with the Bucks. Man, weird set of circumstances. I agree. It doesn't change my numbers really much at all. Other than you're right in that, like, going with the more experienced coach gives them potentially a little bit more dynamism in a playoff series, as opposed to Griffin, who may have been making rotational mistakes and needed a year to kind of get his feet under him. But I don't see Doc Rivers as a meaningful upgrade in that context, and I think this is weird, man.
It is quite peculiar. I do think it makes sense that they did this, though, just given how poorly they've been playing and the defense being as bad as it's been. Just,
do you think that's coaching and not personnel?
I mean, what you trade Drew Holiday for Damian Lillard, and you go from the best defense or the second best defense in the NBA to what are they now? They're like the 20th best defense.
They don't have anyone to defend point of attack.
Well, that's the problem. This is the problem with this team. Actually down to 22 in defense after getting lit up by the Pistons back to back. But it's just like Malik Beasley, who I think was getting played off the court for his defense with the Lakers, and now he's literally their number one defensive wing stopper. This team has really missed Jay Crowder, my namesake, which is a problem because no team that has championship aspirations should be missing Jay Crowder this much. I think that it raises their ceiling a little bit, and maybe they'll just do something different on defense. The people forget this, but like they scrapped their defense after like 3 games or something.
Yeah,
like, they came into the season with one defense, wasn't working. Let's just go back to what we were doing. So that's a problem. They don't have anyone who, like these younger guys, like they really needed Beauchamp or Jackson or something to really become someone, to become like a better version of the Thabo Cephalosha role on those Thunder teams where you can just be 3 and D, and it just hasn't really happened. Brook Lopez has been fine, but he's older. Giannis quietly has been like, this is the best Giannis has been in a long time.
Yeah, he looks great.
He's been excellent, and I think that he is. I mean, his chances of winning MVP, everyone's chances of winning MVP are going to be difficult with him, what Embiid is doing. But I think he is kind of closer to the Embiid doesn't qualify MVP realm than people realize. Like, I think he's right there with Shea and Jokic, even if he's slightly behind them now. But yeah, I think it's a personnel thing. And I'm not really sure how they fix that, given they have no assets really to move.
Yeah. The best defending guard / small forward, now that they don't have Drew Holiday, is Pat Connaughton, and he's a minus on defense. That's a problem. And that doesn't solve itself by bringing in Doc Rivers. So
Pat Connaughton on deep. So Pat Connaughton, he has a negative 5.8 EPM this season, which he can't possibly be that bad. But I mean, he's in the first percentile for defensive EPM. Like, it's just been a disaster whenever he's on the court. And again, I don't think he's actually that bad, but it just goes to show how much they have struggled. Now, someone who is the only thing I really care about in the NBA outrights market is just the Celtics winning the title. Like, it's just been all in on from the start. And a big part of that handicap for me, or at least a meaningful part of it, is that I think there are only 3 teams in the East that matter. And that's Boston, Milwaukee, and Philadelphia, with respect to Miami, who ripped my heart out and Boston's heart out last year, and then almost did the same the year prior. Like, if Boston have a Eastern Conference final matchup against Miami again, like, sign me up. That would be a dream. I don't want to see I only want to see one of Embiid or Giannis in the playoffs. And I do think that just with how poorly this team was playing, I do think there was some risk that they could have fallen to 4 in the East. But a big part of the handicap was that Milwaukee and Philly would be the 2-3 and Boston are the 1, and you only have to play one of those. I do think now that there is scope. I don't think they can get much worse than they're playing this season, which is strange because they are 30-13, but the process has been so poor, where I do think they are likely to finish 2 or 3 in the East. Very likely get Philadelphia, which is, aside from my betting positions, like, it is about time that we saw a Giannis Embiid 7-game series.
Oh, yes.
Which would be a lot of fun. But, I mean, how do you think that I've been watching these teams lately? I'm like, Philadelphia just better than Milwaukee? Like, are they just more likely to win the East than Milwaukee? Like, what's your read on those 2 teams?
Man, it's such a narrow margin that you kind of come down on. Honestly, that sounds like a 7-game series to me. That's defined, decided by whoever is the most efficient in iso ball in the final 4 minutes of that game. Like that is narrow margin over a best of 7 series. I guess I would tilt in Philly's favor because, again, Milwaukee has no answers for point of attack defense, which means that you have a number of guys, including Maxey and Tobias Harris, who are going to be able to get easier baskets, particularly if they sell out to keep the ball out of Embiid's hands in crunch time. And Embiid has had a propensity to not really want his ball in the hands in crunch time in those kind of a games. So, I think ultimately Philly would probably be my pick. But no, you're set up well right now because Miami is kind of – they might be on the other side of the bracket of the Celtics as well. There's two things. Number one, they could be in a road series against the Cavs, who are playing really good ball, or they could be, in the 6, where you would get potentially a Milwaukee-Miami round 1 series, which would be something to see. another Miami-Milwaukee. Maybe the basketball guys just want that every year, and it is what it is. But basically everything that's happened so far this season has tended to reinforce that the Celtics in the playoffs are going to be an extremely tough out. And at plus 130, you're obviously not taking running to the window to get that bet in at this time. But I'm not going to have any reservations of getting a little aggressive betting Celtics in the playoffs.
Yeah. And I think for all the discourse and concern around the Celtics crunch time clutch offense, I don't think people realize that the Celtics net rating in the clutch this year is plus 18.7. That's third best in the NBA. They've been really good in the clutch. And I think that the Denver loss is that Tatum just missed shots, and then they missed open threes and they couldn't make a 3 in the second half. It is a little bit of a concern that, again, and so much of late game offense in the NBA, particularly in the playoffs, comes down to your best player holding the ball with 9 seconds left on the shot clock, needing to do something. And there is just more that Nikola Jokic or Kevin Durant or Stephen Curry, there's just more that those guys can do with just their player type and their skill level than what Jason Tatum can do. A friend of mine made a good point of all right, just imagine a late game Jokic possession, and you think of him backing down on the post and reading the floor and either bullying his man into the hole or passing out to an open 3. What do you think of Jason Tatum? What does Jason Tatum do in that spot? It's you don't have great kind of thoughts. It's a step back 3 with a hand in his face, or just driving into traffic and hoping that the shot the flailing shot kind of falls. But that's pretty niche, and ultimately I think that they still have the best team. And to your point about Miami, I think it's a problem for them that the Cavs are really good all of a sudden, and the Knicks are a serious team now, a serious team in terms of I think they can win around in the playoffs. So Miami is no lock whatsoever to beat either of those teams. And then the last thing is that I actually think that Philadelphia are more likely to win the East than Milwaukee. And the reason for that is that it's the same reason why I went kind of all in on Boston after they traded for Kristaps, is that Boston at that point, they weren't a finished team because they still had first round picks. They still had the Brogdon and Williams contracts. Those are projecting that, this team is all in. They've clearly made that indication by trading for Kristaps Porzingis. And then they make the Drew Holiday trade. And it's the same thing with Philly now, is that they have assets, they have contracts to move. This team is very likely going to get better at the deadline. Now, whether that's trading for another star, I think it's probably more likely that they trade for someone like Alex Caruso. But if they get Alex Caruso, then I think they're probably just better than Milwaukee as is. And Milwaukee have no scope to get better. They have no assets to move. This is their team right now, with Malik Beasley as their version of OG Anunoby, basically, in terms of he is their wing stopper. So that is how I would break that down. Anything else on the East before we call it?
Terry Rozier doesn't really move the needle for you for the Heat?
I mean, he's fine. He's good. He's a good player, and they'll get more out of him than they got out of Lowry. And I think that, watching Miami, particularly in the Denver series, that was a team that just needed additional shot creation outside of Jimmy Butler. And some of that, Tyler Hero gives them some of that. Rozier gives them that as well, and he's less of a defensive liability than Hero. But I just don't really see the upside of this team relative to the big three at all. And like, I literally don't see their height. Like, it's a problem that, everyone, like, Bam Adebayo is a magnificent player and he's kind of adored in league circles and everything. But like, I think it is kind of a problem with that team that, like, Bam Adebayo is 6'9" and doesn't shoot threes. Like, it's a structural flaw of that team. And you kind of saw it manifest against Denver in the finals, where like Bam can't guard Jokic one-on-one, and not many people can, but he can't. And I'm not sure what kind of success he's going to have against Joel Embiid if that is the matchup. And then on the other side, like, I think Boston just have such a talent advantage. So not too worried about Miami, though I wasn't worried about them last year either.
Okay. Very, very fair. For Wednesday in the NBA, kind of a weird card. Only thing really popping for me is the Dubs, I think, can get back on track against this deeply unserious Atlanta Hawks team. Not expecting Trae Young and DeAndre Hunter to be available for this one. And Atlanta's just in a brutal spot here. So let's go Dubs. Yep.
No, that I do think there is a mini renaissance coming for the Warriors, even though I don't think that they're a threat.
Mini one.
Wiggins has quietly been a little bit better.
Yes.
2 games, which helps, and they'll get Chris Paul back too, which helps. All right, we are done for now. Later in the week, we're going to talk about the most improved player market. So stay tuned for that. We'll go through the awards markets kind of one by one over the next week or so. But in the meantime, don't forget to check out NBCSports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks for those watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. And please, if you're listening to us as a podcast, don't forget to rate and subscribe. Also a reminder to find all your favorite NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. From Jay Croucher and Drew Dinsick, thanks again to Caitlin Thompson. We will see you soon.